On the windy tip of Africa, along the coastal dunes, lives an elegant raptor that searches every inch of vegetation for mice to feed its chicks. Its Latin name, Circus maurus, means dark circler, aptly describing the bird's constant watchful loops of flight. We'll follow a raptor biologist as he studies them. After more than a decade of research, this dedicated scientist continues to uncover more and more of the black harrier's compelling secrets. The majestic southern tip of Africa. Here, two contrasting oceans, the icy Atlantic and warmer Indian Ocean, meet at a unique place on Earth, the Table Mountain National Park. Here, a giant rocky wall of iconic mountain rises above the sea. This mountain range is home to the majestic black eagle. Only a single nesting pair remains on the cliff, protected inside the park. Every year they raise only one chick, the one that survives the Cain and Abel struggle, which invariably ends with the death of the weakest sibling. These powerful eagles nest only on the safest cliff, away from terrestrial predators. They fly over one of the planet's most biologically diverse landscapes. The southern tip of Africa is recognized as the sixth floral kingdom in the world. A few kilometers northwest of Table Mountain, the landscape flattens. Pristine dunes line the coast. This is the home of the black harrier. A master circler of the windy African coast, this raptor is found nowhere else in the world. Unlike the black eagle, the black harrier raises several chicks during the breeding season. But the fact that they nest flat on the ground means they face far greater risks. Not much was known about this unique bird until, 11 years ago, raptor biologist Rob Simmons chose to follow them in their main breeding grounds, the West Coast National Park.
25, 30 odd years ago, I came to Africa, 80, 90 species of raptors around. It was just heaven. Fell in love with the bird. Here's a fascinating species. It's polygynous. It nests on the ground. It's relatively easy to study. Coming to Africa, it was an obvious thing to go and look at the African marsh harriers and the black harriers. Here's two stunning birds. Almost no work been done on them, surprisingly. When I first came back to South Africa in the year 2000, here's an endemic species, black harrier, that no one was studying. So Andrew Jenkins, Odette Curtis and myself all arrived at about that same time at the same conclusion. Here's an endemic species, really needs some work done on it. So we decided we should come and study this species, and that's how I started off with black harriers.
The West Coast National Park. Here, the unique lagoon and vegetation form an internationally recognized biodiversity hotspot, protecting vital breeding islands for endemic marine birds. After the winter rains, the coastal vegetation explodes into color. The wet season has cast its spell. It is breeding season, a time where most of the park's animals are active.
Here in the southwestern corner of Africa, we've got the core breeding area of the black harrier in the Fynbos, in the Renosterveld. It is an endemic species. It does go into Namibia. We think it might breed there, but it hasn't been proven yet. It has a very small population. And my study is to find out why it is so rare. And to give you some idea, we think there is about between 1,000 and 2,000 individual black harriers in the world. It's a tiny population. We think there's about probably 500, 700 breeding pairs of black harriers. We don't know why they're so rare, but we've got some ideas, and that is very much to do with habitat. In this southwestern corner, we've got some large protected areas. We've got some of the private nature reserves like Jakobsfontein, we've got Coburg Nature Reserve, we've got Ronderberg, where we've been doing some of our work. We've got the West Coast National Park, which is a big chunk of coastal strandfelt. This is where the harriers are found. You go outside that, you do find some harriers, but it's very much lower numbers. They need this pristine felt in which to put their nests and in which to forage.
This year, the rains have been good. The landscape is fresh and lush, which is exactly what the black harrier requires. Pristine vegetation for nesting and a ready supply of food for its chicks. The coastal belt is rich in small rodents, the raptor's staple diet. Black harriers build their nests directly on the ground.
So there are 16 species of harrier throughout the world. They're all long-winged, long-tailed species. 15 of those species nest on the ground. There's just one species, the spotted harrier in Australia, that nests in trees. So of all the raptors, the owls and the harriers are the ground nesters. In Africa, we've got two, the African marsh harrier, which nests in reed beds, and we've got the black harrier, which nests in more steppe-like habitat, dry country, but in the damp areas within that habitat. Open country, not within trees. The starred part here is where the chick is inside, lifting up his egg tooth on the end of his bill, cracking the shell, and I can hear him in here, and I can feel him as well, and eventually he will star all the way around, or about 3/4 of the way around the top of the eggshell here, and the cap will then just come off, and then he'll emerge, he will actually hatch. That process could take another 12 to 24 hours for him to actually get out of this egg.
When black harriers arrive on the southwestern corner of Africa to breed, Rob is at his busiest, checking the nests and collecting vital information on this rare raptor. Not all birds breed at the same time during the season, so Rob has to inspect several nests, all at different stages in the breeding cycle.
They have quite a variable clutch size, that's the number of eggs in the nest, which varies, can be just one egg sometimes, can vary up to 5 eggs. That's very common to harriers throughout the world. Variation is almost entirely dependent on the food supply. And the food supply in this case are mice. Voles in Europe, mice in this part of the world. And when you've got a low number of mice, you have a low number of breeding harriers. The clutch size is low. Egg size doesn't seem to vary. That seems to be dependent upon the size of the female herself. But the number of eggs does. Good mouse years, you've got lots of eggs. Low mouse years, you've got very few eggs and very few birds breeding. And that's what's interesting about these particular harriers. They will move around the country, I think, trying to find where those good mouse populations are.
Not far off, Rob finds another nest. These chicks are 20 days old. One of the eggs did not hatch. The chicks have been recently fed, and with a bit of manoeuvring, Rob can see what was for lunch.
Doing that. I'll feed it back to him. That's mouse.
To expert eyes, These two siblings are already different.
So I think this bird on my left is a female, so a thick tarsus, and the thinner tarsus and smaller foot overall of the male on the right. That's my guess at this age. That will get more pronounced as they get older.
The chicks are old enough to be ringed.
Okay, I think we'll put both of those in the shade. And we'll put the egg in the shade as well, for that matter. This egg almost certainly won't hatch. It's not developed at all. It stayed the same weight.
As Rob inspects several nests in the region, it is clear that some pairs are breeding much earlier than others. By timing their breeding to coincide with a spike in the rodent population, black harriers increase their chances of successfully raising chicks. Nest distribution shows that black harriers breed mostly at the southern tip of Africa and only in pristine vegetation. Here in the Overberg, the few existing black harriers build their nests on the periphery of large farms, which were once their natural breeding grounds. Because they do not nest or hunt on agricultural land, they have been forced into small patches of untouched indigenous flora. On the west coast, there's a much higher concentration of nests, all in protected areas, the West Coast National Park and private reserves to the south. Over the next few weeks, Rob will have the unique opportunity to observe two nests here. Curiously, black harriers are the only species in the harrier family to tolerate spying. Rob will monitor two nests a few hundred meters apart, Dune Nest and Jackal Nest. Visiting these nests gives Rob a snapshot in the life cycle of the black harrier. Small spy cameras provide precious glimpses of the interaction between parent and chicks. These intimate scenes have never before been captured on film, adding a groundbreaking new dimension to Rob's research. For the first time ever, he can document every moment of nest activity, from egg to fledgling. This is Dune Nest. Originally, it contained 3 eggs, but one chick died while hatching. What happens next has never been recorded before. The mother harrier carefully inspects the lifeless chick. After realizing that it's dead, she wastes no time. Interestingly, she does not feed the other chicks. She wastes nothing, carefully cleaning the eggshell of yolk and discarding it so that no traces of the incident remain. This way, predators will not be attracted to the nest. This is the very first footage of black harrier cannibalism. If it weren't for the camera, Rob would have no way of knowing how the mother deals with dead chicks. At the nest, it's a long wait. The male is still out circling for prey. food at last. He delivers the prey at her feet. This time, it's a small bird. But the father harrier doesn't stay long. Soon, he's off hunting again. Using her impressive talons and beak, the mother prepares small morsels for the chicks. After a good meal, she cleans her talons methodically. Any scent or trace of prey would betray the nest to land predators. Then it's back to guarding over her delicate chicks. Her partner circles above the nest with no prey. Perhaps her call encourages him to keep hunting. She must be hungry and can't be very comfortable. If 2 fast-growing chicks keep parents busy, 3 are a serious challenge. 20 days after the 3 chicks hatched, spy cameras at Jackal Nest show much more activity. Reversing into the bush, one chick goes to the toilet. Their leg muscles are still weak, but their sphincter muscles more than compensate. The parents must deliver more and more food. It's early morning, and both parents are hunting. The male passes prey to the female, and she takes it to the nest. The male gets the message. They need more food. During the first feeds of the day, the larger chick gets most of the food. The parent harriers must deliver more and more food to the nest each day if their chicks are to survive. One chick is much smaller than his siblings. Competition for food will be tough for this youngster. The spy cameras are giving Rob detailed new insights into how the female behaves on nest duty. 2-day-old chicks at June nest are fragile, requiring her constant attention. With chicks so small, the female is reluctant to leave the nest. She waits for the male to bring food, which must be enough to feed both her and the chicks. She does no hunting at this stage and is entirely dependent on her mate's abilities. She moves the chicks to the center of the nest, eliciting some protest. Her versatile beak also does a good job shaping the nest. As time passes, it becomes a challenge for her to stay watchful. After such long periods sitting on the nest, it's important for the mother harrier to have a good stretch. At this stage, she is vulnerable to land predators and must be ready to take off at a moment's notice. This is when the chicks are most vulnerable and she is most alert, scanning the ground around the nest and the sky above. The pied crow is also looking for food, but he'll have no luck here. Mother harrier is standing guard. At last, after a few hours, another morsel is on the way and delivered at her feet. It's a small rodent this time, the most common prey for these coastal nests. The chicks are still very small. Their little bodies don't need much food for now. Some of the prey will be the mother's lunch. The mouse's head, far too big for the chicks, is a welcome snack. As is the tail and other large parts. After lunch, Mum returns to nest duty. She snatches a brief siesta, but always keeps one eye open for danger. Although Rob has long known that black harriers come to this part of the country to breed, where they go after raising their chicks and what they do in the black of night have, until very recently, counted among the dark circler's mysteries. Now, satellite tag technology allows Rob to track the bird's movements with absolute precision. Information that is crucial for the protection of this rare African raptor.
Tools out of the front here to get...
Rob will attempt to capture and tag an adult female. Rob and his daughter Catherine have done this many times. The best way to entice the bird to land on the trap is to use its favourite prey. A wire cage covered by nylon loops protects mice from the harrier's talons.
As long as it goes right in.
Rob will have only one good chance to make the catch. He needs to place the trap in just the right spot. He sets it up strategically, just under the female's favourite perch. The mice can't be in the sun for too long, so Rob has a limited window of opportunity. The waiting game begins. Hopefully the harrier's hunting instincts will take care of the rest.
Yeah, the way she's looking there, looks like she's seen the trap. She's looking down.
There we go, there we go.
Let's go. So this is a female black harrier. She's a breeding bird. We've just caught her on the Balshatri trap. She is about 30% larger than the male, so there's reverse-sized dimorphism. The female's pretty much always larger in the raptors. As you can see, she's black throughout except for the underwing there. Very large, very broad wings. We're spending a lot of time on the wing during the day. Hunting for mice, birds and that sort of thing, lizards, 1 to 2 meters above the ground. Very broad tail for those quick turns. When they see the mice, they will hit them very hard, almost instantaneously. The mouse is dead. One of the most interesting things on this bird, like an owl, she has a facial ruff here. That will channel the sound into her ears, and she will sometimes hit mice that are below a spongy layer like this. She's heard them there, she'll go after them. If it's too thick, obviously, she won't be able to get them. But clearly they have extremely good hearing. I also think from some of the work I've been doing with satellite tagging that they are hunting at night. Not very often, but occasionally. They're certainly moving around at night from the satellite tagging work. Part of my work here is to look to see if they are actually bringing in gerbils, which are nocturnal mammals that they might be after. Haven't found any yet, but hoping to with more work with infrared cameras. Another feature of all harriers, and particularly black harriers, is a very long legs. You see, I'm holding her by her legs here, and the tarsus, the bare part there, the yellow part, is very long. This is going to be 7 or 8 centimeters long, also for capturing mice in deep grass. And they're very, very quick with these. This is why I'm holding them this way. To get these talons in your skin, that hurts. I've only ever had the youngsters, never had an adult put these. With larger birds such as eagles, if these go into your wrist, they sometimes come out the other side. So not in this particular bird, but things like crowned eagles, martial eagles have been known for some raptor biologists to actually puncture completely the hand and the forearm. So they're very powerful birds. These birds would rely on hitting their prey very hard to kill it. And as I say, it's mainly mice here in the West Coast National Park and up the west coast areas of South Africa. You'll notice she's got very bright yellow eyes. As youngsters they have brown eyes, and they will get very bright yellow eyes as adults. And the cere, this yellow piece of skin on the front of the bill there, is also a guide to their quality. The other birds can see that in the ultraviolet, and a bright yellow cere is a sign of a good quality bird, so I think this bird is in very good condition. She feels heavy. I've been watching her for about a month now, and she's been raising two nestlings almost to the flying stage as we speak here at West Coast National Park.
Once the bird is in hand, Rob gathers as much information as possible for his database. Covering her eyes minimizes her stress.
There we go. I want you to gently put her onto her back.
The permanent metal ring and a colouring make it easy to identify her in the field.
Tarsal measurement. Most people, when they're studying raptors, will go and mark them in some way so that you can follow individuals around. With peregrines, with African marsh harriers, with rock kestrels, you put a mark on, you'll see the same individuals there in the territory, around their nesting site, year after year after year, perhaps for 8 to 10 years. Some of these birds are surviving with the colour rings, potagial tags. You do that with a black harrier, you don't see it the next year. It's not because the bird is dead, it's because it has moved out. So that means you've got to find another method of following these birds around to know where they're going, what they're doing. And that's why I've turned to satellite tagging, which is, as we've seen, a little tag on the back of the bird, weighs 12.5 grams, rather expensive, $3,000 US. But that will follow the bird around anywhere on the globe. So here in the West Coast National Park, we've put a tag on a bird. We will follow that bird around, and we'll be able to see where it's nesting next year. We'll be able to see where it's foraging this year.
Satellite tags have shown that some birds are very active at night, and Rob now suspects that black harriers even hunt in the dark. Their facial ruff might be the clue. It acts as a sound receiver, helping the raptor to find its prey without having to see it. The tag will provide vital information, tracking nocturnal movement and helping to determine exactly where black harriers spend their time after breeding. This female is ready to go. Hopefully, her new tag will offer new information about the lives of black harriers. She's flying with ease and seems comfortable with the tag. After 20 days on the June nest, the 2 chicks have grown substantially and become far more demanding. The male flags the first catch of the day. The female can now leave the nest to receive the food in mid-air, bringing it back down to the nest. The male is no longer tolerated at the nest. This meal is a fairly large rodent. The female is quick to process the catch. Her hungry chicks are now able to swallow much larger chunks of meat. They are well fed. Their crops bulge. She too must eat and takes her share. As always, she is careful not to leave bits of meat in the nest or on the chicks. The chicks are much bigger, making it tricky for her to cover them. It's midday, and she catches a quick nap. The spy cameras are showing a clear slump in prey delivery at certain times of day, something Rob has also observed over the years.
Black harriers hunt not for the whole day. They've got a very distinct pattern, which we've had a very close look at. Early in the morning, they will spend some time sunning. They will defecate, they'll fly around their territory. But generally, if the wind isn't up, they'll stay there until about 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, and then they'll go off hunting. During that time, they're obviously coursing low over the vegetation, looking for mice, birds occasionally. In the coastal areas, almost always mice. In the montane areas, about 50% mice, 50% birds. So about between 9 o'clock and 10 o'clock, we call it the happy hour, is when all of the prey starts to come into the nest, either to the female or to the chicks. That's when they're doing most foraging, they're catching most mice, they come and deliver it to the nest, and then that tapers off over lunchtime. 3 o'clock to 4 o'clock, that's when they're hunting again, and the number of prey that come into the nest goes up, and you might get 2, 3 prey items, mice again coming into the nest. Thereafter, it tails off into the evening till they're doing nothing pretty much after about 7 o'clock or so. So you've got these 2 peaks, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock. In the middle of that, they take their siesta. Why does that happen? We think that happens because when we looked at mouse activity patterns, and these are rhabdomous, little striped mice and otomus, but especially the rhabdomous, we find that they have activity patterns, and they have a very high peak early in the morning, which the harriers miss. About 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, they have another peak, which the harriers are exploiting. During the noontime period, when it's hotter, the mice are also taking a siesta. 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, they're another mouse peak, decreases thereafter into a trough, and then the mice have another peak in the evening, which black-shouldered kites and owls might be exploiting, but the harriers aren't. We don't know why they're not exploiting it. It'd be a good time to go and hunt mice. But the 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock peak and the 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock peak are the ones which are being exploited by the harriers.
At midday, the sun scorches down. The 3 chicks at Jackal Nest are feeling the heat. Some search out a shady spot. If all else fails, opening their beaks will help them to cool down. Every now and then, the female checks on the nest as she hunts. In the heat of the day, the park's reptiles become active. A mole snake has found a scent in the sand and begins to dig. She's a skillful predator of the sandy underground. And there she's found it. A nutritious tortoise egg. When the midday heat has passed, the female brings a lizard to the nest. The younger chick is able to catch up on his share of food for the day. Happy hour starts again, and the male brings more food to be fetched by the female. Up above, there's trouble. An African marsh harrier is crossing the territory. Frequent activity at Jackal Nest has been spotted. The parents are in total distress this time, and the danger seems very serious. Their call alerts the chicks to remain motionless.
One of the problems that you have with a ground nesting species like a black harrier, there's a constant predation threat. And in this case, we're watching 3 youngsters, 2 large ones and 1 fairly small one. They have now obviously gone. There's a scat there, we'll identify it later. Well, clearly a predator has been in here, had his lunch and disappeared. The youngsters have gone, the adults have gone. They will be back next year to try and breed, or other birds will breed. This is a very favored area here. About 4 out of 14 of the nests we've been following the West Coast National Park have succeeded in getting flying young off the nest. Other birds have been depredated by, there are crows around, pied crows around, and there are mammalian predators around. Always a threat.
Fearing the worst, Rob checks on the chicks at June Nest. But all seems to be going well here.
They are about between 2 and 3 weeks old. You see they're getting their first feathers there. He took a little excursion into the back of the nest there to find a cooler place. He's panting slightly on this hot day. He's also escaping predators that might come to the nest. They become very active at this stage, exercising their wings, strengthening their legs, walking around, flapping and so on. So they can be sometimes several meters away when you go 3 weeks or 4 weeks of age. They can be several meters away from the nest. And he's now waiting for the female to come back with some food, and he will probably bed down in a cool little spot there until she comes. She will always come to the nest, even if she has to go looking for him elsewhere. She'll know where he is, and then she'll come to the nest and expect them to come in to get the food.
And there she is, arriving with food. It's been a month since the 2 chicks hatched at June Nest, and Rob and Catherine will give them a final checkup. As is normal at this stage, they have moved about 20 meters away from the nest.
So they will flap away from you and then come around that bush and towards me.
It will take some searching to find them among the vegetation.
Okay, I've got one here, both here. All right, okay. So I've been following this nest for about a month now. I've got 2 chicks here. They're ground nesters, so as they get older, and you can see the bird in my hand here, they're going to lose the fluff from them and from their head, and they're going to start to exercise their wings. They leave a lot of fluff behind. That's going to attract predators. So what they do is to move away from the nest. They first of all make runnels, about 3 weeks old. These are exactly a month old, these guys. They're going to fly in about another 5 to 10 days properly, and then start to take food from the parents aerially. As you can see, they've already got a well-developed wing here. They're going to lose this down from it, and once they do that, then you're going to see a very beautiful brown bird flying around. Short stubby tail at this stage, so in 10 days this still isn't going to be completely grown. It's going to be about 3/4 grown. One of the things we look for to see how good condition they are is to look for so-called stress bars in the tail. These show up as lines across the tail where the protein that goes into the feather has actually been lost on that particular day. It might have been a cloudy, wet day when they're not being fed. Might have been stress from a mongoose, from a researcher. Fortunately, I don't see any stress bars in this guy's tail or the other one there, so it means during the development up to now, they've been fed very well, they've had no particular stress, and that will probably mean they will do very well as adults. He's not very happy about.
This is the last time Rob will measure them.
Oh, no, just fly.
The young birds are just a few days from one of the most important survival tests of their life, learning to fly. The wind is right, the spectators anxious. There's a long, uncertain journey ahead for these young birds. They are testing their wings. Rob's tireless research will continue to uncover the secrets of the dark circler, here on the southern tip of Africa, where its presence both enriches the landscape and reminds us of its fragility. The female with the satellite tag is already providing valuable information. After breeding on the west coast at sea level, she covered a full 1,200 kilometers to hunt in the alpine grassland of the Drakensberg and Lesotho, 3,400 meters above sea level. Her journey followed a similar route taken by previously tagged birds. She also seems to be moving at night in complete darkness, explaining the owl-like features of this bird. And Rob now has good evidence to suggest that after breeding on the West Coast National Park, some birds move to summer rainfall regions in search of good hunting grounds along the grasslands. In the summer after the rain falls, the highlands are rich in a variety of rodents, such as ice rats. The black harriers seem to be aware of favourable seasonal conditions on the other side of the country. With new information, new questions surface. For Rob, fresh insight into the life of the black harrier begins another chapter in his research. Each discovery improves the survival prospects of this rare and extraordinary bird.